All right, good morning, everybody. What's going on? Well, this story, day by day, continues to unravel, and we keep hearing more and more news about this Joshua Fury fight that is supposed to happen in July. Uh, let's do a quick recap, and I apologize if I'm being repetitive or redundant here, but for those who don't know, let's just do a quick recap of the whole situation. And then we'll unpack it and I'll give my thoughts on the whole thing. Now, on March 15th, news was released by Mark Kriegel during an interview. Mark Kriegel is a journalist for ESPN, he's a commentator for ESPN. And he said that both Fury and Joshua signed a two-fight agreement to fight twice this year, once in the summertime and once later in the year, possibly in the fall or the winter. This agreement was signed on March 13th, according to Mark Kriegel, and he reported it on March 15th. And he also said that both sides had 30 days to have this fight done, contingent upon the date, a site, and a venue being provided within those 30 days. And obviously, someone would have to put up the money, some source, some whether it be a site fee or whatever, somebody, whether it be from a site fee from a location or from investors, whatever. Someone had to put up the money. And for the fight to take place in the summertime, they had 30 days from March 13th. Now, Tyson Fury recently tweeted out yesterday there's 3 days left on this timeline, and the clock is still ticking. And John Fury, Tyson Fury's father, has been very vocal about his criticisms on why this is taking so long, uh, what's going on here. You know, nothing has progressed throughout this whole process, and he's complained a lot about the circumstances that we have right now in regards to this whole process. I know Frank Warren came out and complained. Frank Warren is one of Tyson Fury's representatives. He's one of his promoters. He came out and said that we were in agreement that nothing was going to be released to the press until we had everything nailed down with the venue, the date, the location, and all of that. But Eddie Hearn jumped the gun a little bit and he leaked out this information. And this is why we are where we are right now. Uh, I've been critical with Eddie Hearn about doing this because, once again, you're selling wolf tickets, you're crying wolf. We've been put in this situation before where, you know, whether it be a promoter, whether it be somebody in a fighter's camp, they do an interview or they leak information out to the press and the press reports upon it. Oh, sources say this, sources say that. Or Eddie Hearn himself, you know, we got it straight from the horse's mouth. Eddie Hearn, who's promoting Anthony Joshua, he came out and released this information. The problem with this is, you get everyone's hopes up high. And then if the fight does not happen, the fans have a resentment towards the event. So, in my opinion, and in Frank Warren's opinion, and even from what I gather from the information that we're hearing out of the Fury camp, I think everybody's upset with the fact that all this information is being put out there, but there's no information, there's no final information to really provide to say that this fight is 100% done. So everything that's being put out there is really just speculation right now. Okay. It's not, nothing is finalized. So why even talk about it if it's not finalized? Why get people's hopes up high? Only if it doesn't happen, then people are going to be let down. And this has happened time and time again. We hear this is close, that's close, so and so's in talks, this blah blah blah, whatever. So that's the problem I have with the whole situation because again, this is basically not really news if the fight's not going to happen. Okay. Who cares that they're talking? Who cares that he's trying to get people to fund this fight? He's looking for a location. He's looking for all this stuff. Who cares about all that if the fight isn't done and the fight is not going to happen? So when these situations arise, we find ourselves, and a lot of people online, obviously, are going to have their opinions about it. But what happens is everyone starts playing the blame game. Okay. And more often than not, if you're on the Tyson Fury's side or if you're on Anthony Joshua's side, regardless of what side you choose to take, um, you become an apologist for that side or you become a defender of that side. And a lot of times, the people on either side, they're not really being objective. They're being biased towards the fighter who they like. Full disclosure, everybody knows I'm a huge Tyson Fury fan. Tyson Fury right now is my favorite active fighter in the sport of boxing today. I love Tyson Fury. I'm biased towards Tyson Fury. Everybody knows that. But I'm also objective in my analysis of Tyson Fury. I've said all along that Tyson Fury is a very unpredictable, very volatile. Um, he's just a very erratic type person. So anytime Tyson Fury says something, anytime Tyson Fury does make a claim, it has to be taken. What's up, Lion Killer? It has to be taken with a grain of salt. Okay, so Tyson Fury is the wild card in this whole situation. Okay, he's the wild card in this whole situation because of his unpredictability. And everyone's talking about how Tyson Fury and his dad or whatever, the Tyson Fury side is the one who's doing all the complaining, and Anthony Joshua is not saying anything. But when has Anthony Joshua really been vocal? When has he really come out and talked to the media? Eddie Hearn has always been Anthony Joshua's mouthpiece. He's never been the one to really come out and do a lot of press. He's never been the one to really come out and talk about things, okay? Unless he has a fight signed and he's doing press, whether it be through a press conference or he's just trying to promote a fight that he currently has. So when Anthony Joshua doesn't have a fight signed, he usually doesn't talk that much to the press. He's more of an introverted guy. He sticks to himself. Every now and then he'll post on social media that he's training, that he's getting in shape. He may say a positive, motivating thing on social media, but he really doesn't talk too much about situations, about the business side of boxing until the fight is actually done. That's when he starts talking about it. So that's not his MO to really talk about things like Tyson Fury does. Tyson Fury is always in the public eye. He's always putting quotes out there. He's always saying things, whether they be outlandish or not. That's Tyson Fury's MO. So for people to say, "Oh, well, all we're hearing from is from Tyson Fury. We're not hearing from the other side." Now, that's not necessarily true because we are hearing from Eddie Hearn, and Eddie Hearn is the one who keeps trying to put a positive spin on this. And again, I get it, but once again, if the fight's not done and the fight doesn't get done, then it puts Eddie Hearn in a very bad situation. He opens himself up to a lot of criticism, and a lot of people are going to give him stick if this fight doesn't happen. So, as I've said throughout the whole course of these negotiations, I've been cautiously optimistic because I cannot ignore the past. I cannot ignore the empirical data. I cannot ignore the circumstantial evidence where we've been here before, only to have the fights not happen. So to sit there and ignore the past and try to be positive about something, it's good to have hope and faith. But at the end of the day, hope and faith isn't always enough. Okay, doesn't mean you can't pay your bills with hope and faith. You can't go to a bank and say, "I want to get a loan out here, and I hope and I have faith that I'm going to pay it back." The world does not run on hope and faith. The world runs on reality. So again, let's get back to the blame game here. Everyone's sitting there saying, well, the Fury camp is the only side talking because they're the ones that are upset. They're the ones that it looks like don't want the fight to happen. And one of the narratives being put out there is, well, Fury wants a tune-up. He doesn't think, uh, he would rather have a tune-up and not jump right into this Joshua fight, which could be plausible. We're not gonna totally rule that out, but Fury has shown that he goes into the lion's den, so to speak. He has put himself in situations that other fighters would not have put themselves in. He went to Klitschko's backyard to win his, the first heavyweight championship that he won. He went to Deontay Wilder's backyard basically twice and was the underdog in both of those fights. And he won both those fights, in my opinion. Obviously, he got a draw in the first one. So Tyson Fury has never been one to shy away from the tough challenges. He's never been one to always look for the path of least resistance. He's put himself in situations where he's been the underdog, where he wasn't expected to win, and he's overcome the odds time and time again. So we got to give him credit for that. And people still always want to question the heart of a fighter. It always comes down to this guy's ducking that guy, this guy's afraid of that guy, whatever. Um, and I don't really subscribe to that theory. I think all these guys at this level, for the most part, they're here for a reason, and I don't think that I don't think, and I don't feel that I should be the one, and I don't think I have the right or be put in a position where I should criticize a guy like Tyson Fury or Anthony Joshua's heart or courage when there's no way in hell I could even dream to do what they have done. So that's just my opinion on that. And again, I'm not trying to tell people what they should believe, what they should think, what they should say. If that's your opinion, you want to play the whole this guy's ducking that guy, this guy's afraid of that, whatever. You can play that game if you want. I'm not going down that road because I think Tyson Fury has shown throughout the course of his career that he's a brave individual and that he'll take on all the toughest challenges. But he has been inactive. Tyson Fury has been active for 488 days, a year and 4 months to be exact. Now, Anthony Joshua, prior to his fight with Kubrat Pulev, was inactive for 370 days, so just a little over a year. So this pandemic really has affected boxing. Okay, it really has thrown boxing for a curveball here. Okay, it really has thrown boxing for a curveball here. We definitely have seen the effects of COVID, and obviously, we have to just come to terms of the reality of the situation when it comes to COVID. So Anthony Joshua was able to get that fight back in December after being off for 370 days. It was a mandatory, which was enforced, believed by the IBF. So he was able to get that fight. Now, people want to talk about, yeah, well, it was Fury's fault that he's been inactive. And obviously he has to take ownership of that. I mean, he's in charge of his career. The people that he has around him doing the business for him, okay, they're there because he put them there. They're there because he put them there. So obviously Fury has to be held accountable for his career and for the people that he has working for him. We're not going to deny that. That's fine. But we have to look deeper into the situation and we have to understand this. So yeah, the fight with Wilder fell through. It was supposed to happen last December, I believe, but Wilder had surgery on the bicep tendon in the left arm, so the fight got postponed. And then as the fight got postponed, and then Arum was trying to say that we're trying to get this in front of a live crowd so we can maximize the revenue and the earning potential of this fight. So they spent a lot of time trying to sort that out, and this was all being done throughout the current situation with the pandemic. So it was hard to put this fight and set this fight up in the proper environment that it should have been set up under this pandemic. We already know that. Okay, that's fine. But all the while, Fury's sitting there waiting for his team to put together this Wilder fight. So then, the rematch clause expires in the contract. So then they start setting their sights towards Joshua. Okay. And then as time goes on, because we're in the pandemic, once again, the same situation that they were in with the Wilder fight, they found themselves in with the Joshua fight. So to be honest with you, to sit there and say, well, okay, all these other fights have gone on, but there's no fight that has transpired since this pandemic started that is on the level of Fury Joshua. Canelo, credit to him, he has fought. He went on to fight a couple times during this pandemic, but he never fought a fight of this magnitude that is as big as this. And he's continuing to fight, but he's not fighting a fight of this magnitude in a fight on this level. Okay. And if he was to fight a super fight against somebody, who would be like, if they were to throw together a third Golovkin fight, which would be a mega fight, I don't think it would get thrown together as easily as Canelo fighting, a Callum Smith, or fighting, the guy he fought, Yildirim, So those fights were not big events for Canelo. So obviously they wouldn't require the amount of work that it would take to put together a fight of this magnitude. So I don't think that's really an accurate comparison. If you want to, and credit to Canelo, he fought. But let's be honest, like Fury tried to fight in December. They were eyeing a fight for December against Ajit Kabayal, whatever. It was going to be a tune-up. But because the Wilder camp, took them to arbitration, so Fury had to deal with that. So while Fury and Wilder were going through an arbitration, Fury was not allowed to fight. So we got to be honest about the situation. So we can't say, oh, well, it's Fury's fault for not fighting somebody. It's his own. Well, again, let's look at the circumstances. Arbitration was going on between him and Wilder. So he couldn't fight anybody. And he tried to get a fight, and and allegedly there was reports that they were negotiating a fight, and they almost had a fight done for December. But because of the arbitration, the fight couldn't go on. So Fury was waiting for the Wilder fight, and the people that was supposed to be putting that fight together for him were not able to get that fight done. Okay. Because of Bob Arum saying we need to put this in front of a live gate. Because no one wanted to leave money on the table. So okay, we'll fight it. We'll fight a lesser known guy in Ajit Kabayal. Okay. And we'll put that together in December, and then we'll keep Fury active. But again, because of the arbitration, Fury was not allowed to fight that fight. So it's not really Fury's fault that the Wilder fight couldn't have gotten made because of the pandemic. Now, could Fury have stepped in and said, you know what? I want to fight Wilder. I don't care if I don't make as much money as the first fight. I understand there's not going to be a live gate. I'm willing to accept less money for the third fight. It's okay with me. That's fine. But then you still have to have Team Wilder agree to those stipulations as well. Agree to that as well. So if Team Wilder is not on board with taking less money and they don't care or whatever, and both sides who are representing both fighters are trying to maximize the amount of money that they could get out of the fight, then of course there's going to be a problem there, because these fighters obviously have managers, they have people who are in charge of the contracts for them. They have lawyers in place. They have all these people who are there to do the business of putting these fights together for them. Obviously, they have to sign the contract, but there's somebody that's there that draws up the contract, and there's another person there on the team that looks at the contract, and they have teams that represent them that negotiate on their behalf. Okay. And it's their job to make that fighter the most money they possibly can. So obviously, Team Fury and Team Wilder were negotiating and trying to get each of their fighter the most that they could have, and because of that, the fight never got made, and it fell by the wayside. So it is what it is. There's it's just the way it happened. But then when the fight never got made and the rematch clause expired, that's when you started hearing from Team Wilder once Fury decided that he was going to go in another direction, or Team Fury decided they were going to go in the direction of fighting Anthony Joshua. So that's where that's the situation. And Fury wanted to have that fight in December, and then he wanted to go into the Joshua fight because Joshua had his fight in December. So of course he's not going to, his side's not going to complain because they already got that fight, and it was easy for them to get that fight because it was a mandatory. It was ordered by the IBF that they had that fight. Okay, and it was against a guy in Kubrat Pulev who was not a tough opponent really on paper. People thought that Joshua was going to knock him out, which he did. So of course Joshua is not going to be upset, or his side's not going to be upset, because they were able to get that so-called tune-up fight, or that in-between fight, before this big potential mega fight were to take place. Fury tried to get his his tune-up fight in December before the mega fight took place, but he was not able to because, again, his situation was different. Team Fury and Team Wilder were in arbitration. So there was no way that he was in a position, or he was able to have that fight. So everyone's saying, well, he should have fought. It's his fault. Well, it's not really 100% his fault if they were in arbitration with Team Wilder, and if he was not allowed to fight until the arbitration was settled. And the arbitration is still not settled. But one thing that, from what I heard, has been determined is, okay, the arbitrator was saying, this is what I heard, and again, I cannot be required or mandated to fight Wilder in the third fight. But now what Wilder is doing now is he is seeking monetary damages because of lost revenue for the third fight not having happened. So Fury is free and clear to not have to fight Wilder, but what does have to happen, or what is being worked out here, is Wilder is going to be compensated. So now Team Wilder is not looking for the third fight anymore. They're looking to be compensated because the third fight did not happen. So now Fury is not obligated to fight Wilder, whereas before that was still up in the air back in December. So the situation for Fury is totally different. So yeah, you could say, well, it's Fury's. Fury put those people around him. Fury signed with Top Rank. Fury has Frank Warren. He has his own management team, MTK Global, whatever. He has all these people around him. He put them there, so he has to be accountable for what they do in terms of how they negotiate for him and how they represent him. So he has to be held accountable for that. But again, there's a lot of things that he didn't that were basically uncontrollable on his side. Like, he didn't know that Wilder wouldn't be ready. He didn't know Wilder wasn't going to be ready for the third fight, that Wilder would have to recuperate from the injury. He didn't know that Wilder was going to have surgery on the arm, and he was going to have to recover from the surgery. He didn't know that the pandemic would go on as long as it did. He didn't know that people were, negotiating on his behalf were trying to put this in front of a live crowd. Like he could have stepped in and said, this, that, and the third, whatever. But again, the other side, which was Wilder's side, would still have to agree. And if nobody was willing to put this fight on because of the pandemic, if nobody wanted to put this fight on, and if they were actually going to be put in a situation where they were going to really lose money on this fight, then it just wouldn't have made sense for them to go through with Wilder Fury 3. So that's why they were going in another direction with a lesser name opponent, because it would have been easier financially to have put that fight together. So at the end of the day, this is always going to be about the money. Nobody's going to leave money on the table if they don't have to. And even now with this situation, you still have a situation where Eddie Hearn is telling you that he's talking to people in the Middle East. He's talking to people in the Far East, but there's still a risk for anyone under these circumstances who are going to put this fight on. We don't know the situation um, in the Middle East. We don't know the situation in the Far East in terms of how they're dealing with the pandemic, or at least I don't know. I know that Europe is struggling with the vaccine. I know that the UK, not the UK, but I know Great Britain, who broke from the UK, they're doing a great job with the vaccine. United States is doing a great job with the vaccine, but other countries like Italy and France and stuff, they're struggling to get people vaccinated. And I'm not so sure how the vaccination process is going in countries like Saudi Arabia, or how it's going in countries in Southeast Asia, or the Far East, or wherever else this fight is being talked about. What I do know is states like Florida, states like Texas, they have very minimal restrictions now. Canelo Alvarez is going to be able to fight in Texas in front of 70,000 people. There's no mask mandate there. So again, there's still a lot of unknown here. We don't know um what the current state is, or at least I don't know, and it's not really being talked about or reported what the current state is in Saudi Arabia, in the Middle East, in the Far East. We don't know their circumstances in terms of how they're dealing with the pandemic, and how their vaccine plan, or if there even is a vaccine plan being rolled out in those in that area of the world, how it's being facilitated. We don't know how that's happening. And again, people want to talk about, well, yeah, Saudi Arabia is the place for this fight. They're going to put up the big site fee, whatever. But let me ask you a question. Was Joshua Ruiz 2 a bigger fight than Fury Wilder 2? Regardless of what Saudi put up for that fight, it still was not a bigger fight than Wilder Fury 2, because again, you have the $17 million gate in Las Vegas, because you have those huge ticket prices that Vegas charges. Okay, you have like $5,000 ringside seats. Okay, so then you have the United States pay-per-view, $80 a pop. People want to talk about, oh, okay, well, Wilder Fury only did 800 pay-per-view buys. Okay, that was in the US alone. So you times 800,000 by 80, and you just do the math there. This fight did well over $100 million. This Wilder Fury 2 fight. And you're not going to sit there and tell me that a fight like Joshua Ruiz, just because Saudi put up that huge site fee, okay, but again, that fight was on DAZN. So people were able to watch that fight for $10. Okay? And you're not going to sit there and tell me that venue in Saudi Arabia was able to generate the same amount of money that the venue in Las Vegas did. So at the end of the day, does it really make sense to put this fight in Saudi when you could put it in a place? Well, you can't put it in a place like Vegas now, but if you were to wait till you could put it in a place like Vegas, because if you put this fight in Vegas, if you think about it, when you look at Golovkin Canelo, right? Their fight did a $27 million gate. Okay. So if that fight is able to do a $27 million gate in Vegas, what would a Fury Joshua fight do in Vegas? And then you can say, well, why don't they just throw the fight in Texas? Again, if you put this fight in Texas, you would not be able to charge the same amount for ticket prices as you were if you would have put it in Vegas. To be perfectly honest with you, from a financial standpoint, it makes more sense to put this fight in Vegas because of the ticket prices, because of the sponsorships. you and then you have to ask yourself, well, who's gonna be the broadcaster for this fight? Is it going to be ESPN pay per view? Is it going to be on the Zone? I was talking to D Style the other day, and he said, well, you know what? They should put the fight on US pay per view and UK pay per view in the United States and the UK, and then everywhere else in the world they should allow it to be broadcast on the Zone. But my response to that is, well, why can't they why can't they do pay-per-view like they normally would do around the whole world? You know? So it's just there's a lot more behind the scenes going on that has to be worked out for this for this fight or for a fight like this of this magnitude to be thrown together, and to sit there and just say, well, it's Fury's fault, it's his side's fault, when you have to look at the circumstances. You have to look at the circumstances. So Fury did try to fight. Okay, it wasn't like, oh, everyone's like, it's his fault that he didn't get him. No, it's not really his fault. He didn't foresee the situation with Wilder playing out the way it did. He didn't foresee him not being able to fight Wilder for the third time. He didn't foresee all the delays in that fight. Okay, he couldn't predict that, number one. He also couldn't predict that Wilder's team would go to arbitration, would force him to go to arbitration. And during that arbitration, he was not allowed to fight. So people keep leaving that part of the story out. When that whole situation with Wilder, when Team Fury and Team Wilder went to arbitration, Fury couldn't fight anybody. He tried to fight in December, as I said earlier in the video. He tried to fight in December, and the fight was blocked. So it's not his fault. And of course, he's going to be mad because he was the guy that was continually put in a situation where he had to wait. He was sitting there waiting for the third fight with Wilder to happen. Then when that rematch clause expired, then he said, okay, well, I'll fight in December against somebody else. And then once that, the situation went to arbitration with Wilder, then that fight was blocked. So then after that, then they were saying, okay, well, let's just put this Joshua fight together. But again, nobody has stepped up to the plate yet. Nobody has stepped up and said, okay, I'm going to put this fight on. Because the amount of money it's going to take to put this fight together, it's going to be a gamble under these circumstances with COVID right now. No one's going to sit there and say, okay, I'm going to put such and such amount of money up under these circumstances, because there's so much that is left to the unknown because of this pandemic. Saudi put up a lot of money allegedly for Ruiz Joshua too, but that was without the pandemic. Now we're in a pandemic, so who knows what Saudi is willing to put up, or anyone in the Middle East or the Far East is willing to put up. Again, we don't know what their circumstances are in regards to COVID over there. We don't know. So there's a lot of places around the world that still have strict restrictions. I live in Massachusetts, and there's still strong restrictions in place in Massachusetts. Even with the vaccine, people still have to wear the mask. People still have to social distance. A lot of these, all the businesses in Massachusetts, they have restrictions on the amount of people that can go into restaurants. They have restrictions on the amount of people that can go to sporting events. So things have changed a little bit here. Restrictions have loosened up a little bit here, but there's still substantial restrictions in place. We are still very far away from being back to normal here in Massachusetts, and many of these states in the East Coast are still under strong restrictions. There's a couple states in the South. We got Florida, we got Texas. Those states are not and do not have heavy restrictions in place, but in those states you still have stores and businesses in those states still have the right to tell people you have to wear a mask or you will not be served, or you will not be serviced in this facility or in this place of business. So even though it's not mandated by the state, the businesses still have the right to enforce their own mandates because of the pandemic. So I know people are hopeful because we have the vaccine. The numbers are going down, but again, we're still not out of the woods. There are still the world is still concerned about this pandemic, and nobody has taken the blinders off here. No one's taken off the training wheels 100% here yet, and because of that, it has an impact on this fight being put together. And if you think about this, everyone likes to talk about Mayweather Pacquiao, but in reality, from a business standpoint, it did make the fight bigger by it being held at the time it was held at. Because again, when the fight was first proposed, they were both offered 25 million apiece up front and a share of the pay-per-view. But then 5 years later, or 6 years later, almost 6 years later, when the fight did come off, they were both offered well over $100 million guarantees. So to sit there, I understand from a fan standpoint, we're worried about this fight not happening, and we're saying to ourselves, well, maybe one of these guys could lose, maybe one of these guys or both of these guys will not be the same the longer we wait. That'll be more time and more mileage on either guy, and they could be further and further being pushed out of their prime. I understand that. So from a fan standpoint, obviously, it would be a great time for the fight to happen now. It would be the most optimal time for the fight to happen now. But from a financial standpoint, from both of these fighters' perspectives, this may not be the right time. John Fury, everyone wants to sit there and laugh and yell and make a joke of what John Fury said, but what he said is 100%, well, in my opinion, is 100% true. I think there's a lot of validity to his statements. He's saying, under these circumstances, who is going to put up the money required that this fight would need? A fight of this magnitude, who's going to put up the money? Okay? What venue is going to say, okay, we're going to let 70, 80,000 people in? Who's going to do that? And then you have the UK fans are going to want to watch this fight, right? So how is that going to play out? How are they going to be allowed to travel? Like, how will that whole process of the UK fans who travel in droves to see their fighters fight? Sometimes 20,000 UK fans will go to an arena somewhere else in the world to watch a fight take place, if it's not on UK soil or if it's not on Great Britain soil. How are they going to be able to travel under these conditions? So I think this whole process is being greatly underestimated. It's being greatly minimized. So there's too many unforeseen things here or uncontrollable circumstances here for someone to just say, okay, we're going to snap our fingers and we're going to put this together. John Fury is right. This may not be the right time for this fight. It just may not be. From a logistic and financial standpoint, the reality of the situation is this just may not be the right time for this fight. As much as we don't want to admit it, as much as we want to believe and we want to blame this side or that side, let's look at the reality of the situation. Again, huge Fury fan, but I know the guy's unpredictable. I know the guy's volatile, but we can't blame him for Wilder being injured. That's not his fault. Well, it is his fault because he probably contributed to it, but he never knew, or he wasn't aware, and he didn't probably think that because of Wilder's injuries, the fight would have been postponed. And then he didn't realize the severity of the pandemic. He didn't realize how strict the restrictions were going to be. He didn't realize how long the restrictions would go on. So that's out of Fury's control. Another thing that's out of Fury's control is the fact that Wilder's team filed for arbitration, which blocked him from fighting anyone else until that arbitration was completed. So he tried again. Oh, it's his fault he didn't fight. No, it's not his fault he didn't fight. It's not his fault because he tried to fight in December. We have to tell the whole story. He tried to fight in December. Okay, so then everyone's like, well, why is he the only side complaining? Well, once again, I told you, Fury's always been vocal. His father's always been vocal. He's always been the guy that's talked a lot in the press. And he's also the guy that is going to be more upset and more frustrated because he's the guy that wasn't able to get a fight in between. And here's the thing too: the WBC, they don't really order mandatories consistently. A lot of times, people who have held the WBC title, they can hold on to that title and fight other fights without a mandatory being enforced for sometimes almost up to 2 years. So it's not like the IBF is very strict. They always order and enforce their mandatories. So it was much easier for Joshua to get a fight based off of that. Okay. So the WBC was not in a position, and they were not willing, and they didn't want to order a mandatory for Tyson Fury. Okay. So because they were in hopes that this Joshua fight could take place, or this third Wilder fight could take place. So they weren't going to step in and order a mandatory for Fury. So of course, he because of those circumstances, he wasn't going to get that fight. He wasn't going to get a fight. There wasn't going to be a mandatory fight ordered for him because of how the WBC operates. Okay. So you have to look at it, to sit there and downplay the effects of this pandemic, and to sit there and say, oh, okay, well, now things are getting better. But again, maybe things may be getting better, but the world has not fully, and this country has not fully went back to normal. We're still light years away from being back to normal. Just because you have Florida and Texas taking off the training wheels and taking off the blinders, the rest of the world has not followed suit. I live in a state that is still tightly locked down. Okay? I have to wear a mask everywhere. There's still limitations on the amount of people that can go into places. Go into a restaurant, the tables are 6 feet apart from each other. Go to a bar, they have fiberglass up. If you have a bar and you don't put the fiberglass up, then you're allowed to put a table next to the bar, and the people sitting at the table cannot face the bar. They have to face straight ahead in the direction that they're sitting, and the bartender brings the drinks over to. So again, this is in a lot of places in this country, and I would venture to say 90% of the country is far from being back to normal. It's far from being back to normal. And then you can say, well, why don't they put this fight in Florida and Texas? Whatever. Okay. But once again, you cannot charge the same amount for tickets that you would in Texas and Florida that you could charge in a place like California or in a place like Vegas. You're not going to be able to charge $5,000 ringside seats like you could in Vegas or California. Nobody who's involved in putting this fight together, because this fight is so gigantic, nobody is going to leave money on the table. Okay? That's what it all boils down to. So the reality of the situation is this. You can blame whoever you want. And once again, Tyson Fury is responsible for his team. He put these people around him. He signed that contract with Top Rank, and he has to deal with the repercussions of that. Even though, people say the fighter is the boss, you still have to work with the promoter. Okay. The promoter still has to put the fight together for you. They still have a lot of, they still have a big impact on where you fight, when you fight, and how much you're going to get paid. You can still negotiate, and you still have to sign the contract as the fighter, but the options are what the options are based on the circumstances of the situation. So you still have to deal with your you still have to deal with your promoter. Your promoter still has to work with you to get the fight done. And if you're going to have a fight put on a network, the network is going to have to agree to put your fight on, and they're going to want some requirements as well. So ESPN say, okay, we'll put this fight on, but this is what we want. So the fighter has to sign the contract, but there are a lot of other contributing factors that go into that contract. And there is compromises that have to be met on all sides. So a fighter just can't take 100% control of a situation and say, this is what I want, this is going to happen, this is that, whatever. There's always going to be some type of compromise that's met from the fighter. Okay, he can't have it 100% his way all the time. So if he wants the fight to be in Vegas and Vegas decides, I don't want to put this fight on, then the fight has to go somewhere else. Okay, if he decides that, you know what, I don't want to fight on any network but ESPN, well then say ESPN says, okay, we'll put the fight on under these conditions, and the fighter can't meet those conditions, then ESPN's going to pass on it. You know, ESPN's not showing Teofimo Lopez versus George Kambosos because someone else put up more money. Okay, so you know, the fighter's the boss, but again, he still has to deal with a lot of outside contributing factors. So Tyson Fury just can't snap his fingers and say, I want to fight April 12th in Vegas, and I want the fight to be on ESPN pay-per-view. Because if all the stars don't line up and everyone's not in agreement with what Tyson Fury wants, okay, if everyone's not on board with his request and his desire, then the fight doesn't get made. Okay, so to just think that the fighter could snap his fingers and automatically just get a fight where, when, and against who he wants, it's not that simple. And the fact that Eddie Hearn, in my opinion, and a lot of the boxing media and a lot of the unrealistic fans are really minimizing the process and really trying to downplay how difficult it is to put a fight of this magnitude together, especially under these circumstances with the pandemic. To sit there and just totally disregard all of those things, I think you're being very short-sighted and unrealistic. So the reality of the situation is, yeah, Tyson Fury is volatile. Yeah, Tyson Fury is unpredictable. Yeah, Tyson Fury has signed fight contracts only to not fight the fights that he signed to fight. Has he pulled out of fights before? Yeah. Did he go on a year, almost a 3-year hiatus because of the things he did and because of circumstances that he put himself in? Yeah, we all know all these things, but we have to also look at this current situation. And yeah, you can say, well, no one twisted Tyson Fury's arm to sign with Top Rank. Yeah, you could say that. No one twisted Tyson's arm to sign with Frank Warren. Yeah, you could say that. But you also have to say it's not Tyson Fury's fault that Deontay Wilder got hurt and the fight was postponed because of Deontay Wilder's injury. You also can't complain about, you know, Tyson Fury having to deal with the pandemic. You can't blame Tyson Fury for the pandemic, and you cannot blame Tyson Fury for Deontay Wilder's team taking his team to arbitration. You can't blame Tyson Fury for those things. Okay? You can't. So a lot that transpired in this past year and 4 months were out of Tyson Fury's control. And because Tyson Fury and John Fury are voicing their frustration, and then people saying, well, why is John Fury talking? Well, that's Tyson Fury's father. They apparently, it appears to me that they have a close relationship. He's close with his father. It appears to me. Do I know that for a fact? No. But it appears that they talk. And I'm sure Tyson Fury is talking to his father. Okay? And if Tyson Fury didn't want his father to talk about it, he probably would have came out and said to his father, don't talk about it. And if he didn't like what his father was saying, he would have come out and said, don't listen to my father. My father's talking BS. But he hasn't done those things. He's basically co-signed along with his father has said. So people are saying, well, why is John Fury talking? He's not part of the negotiation. But that's his father. Okay? John Fury is in his immediate close circle. And if Tyson Fury doesn't have a problem with John Fury talking about the fight, I don't understand why anyone else would. So everyone wants to dismiss John Fury. He's this, he's that. Oh, the Furies are just being negative. The Furies are not being negative. They're being realistic about the situation. And anyone that's just criticizing the Furies, oh, they don't want the fight. When did they say they didn't want the fight? Fury has waited for a year and 4 months to get a fight. And every time, he's trying to get a fight done, something gets thrown up as an obstacle from preventing it to happen. I repeat, and I apologize for sounding redundant. It's not Fury's fault that Wilder could not go in October because of the injury. It's not Fury's fault that a fight couldn't get put together because there was not a live crowd. Where were they going to put the fight? It would make absolutely no sense to put a fight like Fury Wilder 3 in the bubble with nobody there. That would make no sense. So that's not Fury's fault. It's not Fury's fault that he couldn't fight in December against Ajit Kabayal. That's not his fault either, because again, what had happened was he was taken to arbitration. The fight was blocked. So how are we going to blame Fury for that? So yeah, Fury has shown volatility throughout his career. Yeah, he's been unpredictable. Yeah, he's pulled out of fights. Yeah, he's put himself in situations in a negative light, and he's done things detrimental to his career because of his own actions. We all know this. But because of that, we can't look at those things. And that's what people are doing here. People are looking at the past of Fury, and they're trying to apply those situations and circumstances that transpired in the past to this situation. And this is a totally, entirely different situation. You can't compare and look at Fury's past as a way to blame him for this fight with Joshua not happening and for the Wilder 3 fight not happening. You can't blame him. So the current circumstances, in my opinion, are really not Tyson Fury's fault. And for him to be criticized about being vocal, about being unhappy about the current circumstances, if I was Tyson Fury and I was in the same situation that he was in right now, I would be unhappy too. I would be complaining too. Think about it. They tried to put the third Wilder fight together. It didn't get done. They tried to have an interim fight in December. It got blocked. They're trying to negotiate this fight, but it seems as though they're being strung along in this situation. Okay? He signed the agreement on the 13th. He signed the agreement on the 13th. And if Eddie Hearn announced tomorrow that we got a date, venue, and a location, and we have the money already put up, then contractually, he would be required and legally bound to fight Joshua. So by him complaining about the negotiations taking long, how does that translate into him not wanting the fight? That's what I'm missing. That's what I'm missing. That JD, that's a block right there. Anytime someone lies, they get blocked. That's a lie. You're not going to lie about that. That's not true. That's not true. It's not true. From now on, anyone that lies, they're getting blocked. I'm not lying. We're not allowing people to lie anymore on there. We're not allowing people to perpetrate the bullshit anymore. No more clickbait headlines, no more lies. Oh, the Caballero fight couldn't get them because they couldn't get the money. That's not true. That's not true. He couldn't fight Caballero because they were in arbitration. It's bullshit. Don't lie. Do not lie. It's not true. You're not allowed to lie on this channel. You're not. You're not. Fake news is not allowed here anymore. Anytime someone lies on this channel, I'm giving you a heads up. You're getting blocked. I'm done with it. I'm done with it. I don't want this fucking sport to turn into TMZ, to turn into fucking with all due respect to WWE. We know that's sports entertainment. We know it's not real. I don't want this sport to turn into WWE, TMZ. No, no more. It's done. It's done. No, that's not true. That's lies. So it is what it is, man. So I don't think it's Tyson Fury's fault. I don't think it's Tyson Fury's fault. Obviously, like I said, he put the team in place. He's got to deal with it. It is what it is. It is what it is. All right, guys, that's all I got for now, man. Again, there's 3 days. There's 3 days left. We saw the tweet from Fury. 3 days left. The clock is ticking. John Fury, we already saw what he said. And everyone's looking at that and saying, oh, well, that means they don't want the fight. No, I look at that as a direct opposite. They're putting pressure on Eddie Hearn to get the fight done. And here's another thing, too. You know, for some reason, you have Frank Warren. All right, you got Frank Warren, you got Top Rank, you got Bob Arum. Why is Eddie Hearn? Here's another thing that's bizarre to me. Why is Eddie Hearn taking the lead here? Why is Eddie Hearn taking the lead here? Maybe again, I don't know this for sure, but maybe they're letting Frank Warren and Bob Arum are saying, okay, Eddie, we'll let you take the lead here. We'll let you try to find the venue and try to find the location and look for the financial backer of the fight. Maybe that's part of the agreement. I don't know. But it's just weird how you have Top Rank, who's arguably the biggest promoter in the United States. Can argue that. And then you have Frank Warren, who's one of the biggest promoters in the UK. Eddie Hearn's obviously the biggest promoter in the UK. And then you have 3 promoters involved in putting a fight together, but only one guy is talking about it, okay? And one guy is apparently the one who's actively trying to put the fight together. So I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I don't know if Bob Arum and Top Rank, the team at Top Rank or the team at BT Sport. I don't know if they're actively looking for a date, venue, and a financial backer of the fight as well. Maybe they are, and they're not talking about it. Maybe Eddie Hearn is the one who's talking about it, but he seems to be taking the lead here, and nobody from the other side is saying, "Well, Eddie's not in charge. He's just no one's saying that that doesn't have the authority to do what he's doing. They're just not happy that he's talking about it, basically negotiating the fight in the press when the fight is not done yet." So again, I don't know the whole behind the scenes in terms of that, but that kind of seems funny to me how Eddie Hearn seems to be the one that's saying, well, I'm looking for the site, I'm looking for the venue, I'm looking for the financial backer. Tyson Fury has a promoter, he has a management team as well. He has 2 promoters and he has a management team as well as Anthony Joshua. You have to question, what are they actually doing to help make this fight happen on their end? So that's a little bit of an imbalance there as well, too. That's maybe an area you can criticize Team Fury in. You got all these people around you. What are they actually doing for you? Maybe you need to really reassess the situation that you're in terms of your promotional team, in terms of your management team. Maybe that needs to be looked at. I don't know. But one thing you can say is Eddie Hearn has done a beautiful job with Anthony Joshua. He's kept him active all along. Anthony Joshua has always had fights. He's always had the mandatories. So Eddie Hearn is doing a good job. I think he's been doing a great job. So it is what it is, man. It is what it is. All right, till next time, Biba's out. Thank you for joining me in the chat. Talk to you all soon. Have a great day, everyone. stay safe, and let's see what happens, man. 3 days left. The clock is ticking. We'll see what happens. Beavis out. Talk to y'all soon. Peace. Have a great day.